The social information processing theory has to do with computer-mediated communication. That's one of those frameworks you need to stick to. Like the interactional view, while it has a lot of different qualities that are present in other situations, the theory holds true within the family. Interactional view, family. Social information processing theory within CMC, computer-mediated communication. That means it only includes IMing, text messages, emailing, blogging, anything that is on the computer or is text only so that there is no non-verbal communication. The second you turn it into a web conference, like now, like you're seeing me, you get to see all of my non-verbal contribution to the verbal message that I'm sending. So that doesn't count. So, what SIP says, Social Information Processing Theory, the SIP theory says that is, if communication and your relationship with a person was like a glass of water, it would be, glass of water, it would be that you could get the same amount of information whether you were taking sips or gulps. Gulps would be with the nonverbal communication that's associated with face-to-face communication, whereas sipping means that on CMC, because there's no nonverbal, it means you'll get the same amount of information, it just takes much longer. So verbal cues, just the verbal part, plus extended time means relationship acuity, which means a depth of the relationship. So, that's what this theory states. I don't know if I totally believe that, but I'll let you make up your own decisions. And the point is, for this entire theory, think about relationships that have started in a CMC environment, like, say, dating on the internet or something like that. Do you really feel like you have gotten, I mean, regardless of how much time you spend, I want to pose the question, do you think, and this is a question you have to actually answer, do you think that translating the relationship that you formed online into a face-to-face environment is successful and can be? Okay, so sip versus a gulp, that's the way you need to remember it. But one of the other aspects of the SIP theory that I really want to talk to you about is the hyper-personal perspective. Hyper-personal perspective is a combination of 4 different factors in the CMC world. Okay, first, the selective self-presentation. That's something that can happen when you have a hyper-personal perspective. And selective self-presentation means when you have time to think about what you're writing and all of that, which is why CMC relationships are so obscure, in that it's an asynchronous relationship with, that's actually the third point of the hyperpersonal perspective, is it's non-simultaneous. Meaning you have like an hour to think about how you write a 3-line email. Whereas if you're talking with someone, you have to think of it right then. So, it's really important with selective self-presentation, you have a tendency to put on your best face. That's not always who you really are, though. It's you under the best circumstances. Okay, over-attribution. Over-attribution has something to go along with side theory. I want you to make sure you look that up in the book and read it. Particularly side theory is an overestimation of similarity. Say you went into a chat room for the Rockies or the Nuggets or something like that. You're going to automatically assume that you have more in common with those people than you likely do. The reality is you really could only just like the Rockies, and that's the only thing you have in common. Like the Christian website that I'm sending you to, you are going to assume that you have more in common just because you're both Christians. It doesn't necessarily mean that's true. And that's a symptom of over-attribution, assuming too much similarity when there may not be a reality in that opinion. Okay, then I had already mentioned non-simultaneous communication is a attribute of the hyperpersonal perspective. Sorry, did you hear my dog? Anyway, non-simultaneous communication allows for you to be able to think through a lot more than you would ever do in a face-to-face interaction. Okay, the other thing is self-fulfilling prophecy. Self-fulfilling prophecy, you guys have heard of this, and it manifests itself in ways with, you call it child dumb. They'll actually believe that they're dumb, they'll stop studying, and therefore become actually dumb, but only because they stopped studying. Not because they actually were, unintelligent. But that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy can also happen with the hyperpersonal perspective, in that, say that someone says, I'm so proud of you, you are so amazing, you're a great guy. Someone praises you in a great guy or girl, whatever, in a certain way, and you want to live up to that. Well, that's actually a good attribute of hyperpersonal perspective, but it also can be negative. Someone, I won't give you examples of the negative, but I'm sure you can think of some. Actually, take an opportunity right now just to think of a few. Okay, so the hyperpersonal perspective, while it has selective self-presentation, it has over-attribution, it has non-simultaneous communication, and self-fulfilling prophecy as the bulk of what creates a hyperpersonal perspective, the overall collective effect of hyperpersonal perspective is an inflated sense of intimacy. This kind of intimacy is where I had a student who was dating online, met this guy on eHarmony. They did all the rules to eHarmony and started sharing and divulging and self-disclosure. There was very deep social penetration into their onions, and they had never met face-to-face, had not even really talked that much on the phone, and they decided to get married. She moved out to wherever he lived, and it took like 2 weeks for the relationship to completely crumble because they couldn't translate the intimacy they had found through IMing and emails into a face-to-face scenario. And little things bugged her. And maybe that's really childish or silly or I don't know, whatever. But the simple fact was she couldn't replicate the intimacy she had online in the real world because there had been such an extended period of time that it remained only in the CMC world and not in the face-to-face world. So that's something to think about. So that is the basis of social information processing theory. Extended time plus verbal cues with no verbals equals relationship acuity. I want to know what your thoughts are. Be prepared to think about that as we talk next week in class.